multitasker in the world. Okay, so we're starting here. So hi, everybody. I'm Satsang from Satsang Solutions, and I'm so happy you're here. And we're talking today how to create more time with human design. And I was just saying that if you have questions at any point, just talk in the chat. I will try to notice the questions. There's a time at the end, and if I happen to miss it altogether, like I did last time, just talk to me afterwards, because I just want to make sure any questions you have get answered. So what we are talking about today is, very briefly, what's human design, and then mainly how to create more time with human design. And then there's a time for questions at the end if anybody has any questions. So what human design is, in a nutshell, in like two sentences, because as mentioned earlier, this is going to be a relatively short presentation because we're all busy, and so I want to make this something that's fun to go to and not like long. So human design is a combination of different modalities, including astrology, the chakra system, and the I Ching. And one thing I really like about human design is that I find it's very practical. Like I like practical things. And so it teaches us how to make better decisions. We're going to talk about that today, among other things, how to communicate better, and basically how to optimize your energy. And I mean, optimizing your energy is all about making better use of time and creating more time in your life. I have a bit of a cough, so hopefully, I'll get through it all talking. So what we're going to see today are human design charts of 3 actual people. I've changed their names, I've changed details about them, so they remain confidential, but just so you know, it's real people. And if you're new to human design, I try to keep jargon down to a minimum, but if you don't understand anything, like, don't worry about it. You'll catch on after a while. And if you don't have your human design chart yet, I would suggest getting it because it's just something really cool to have. And there's a million places online where you can get one. All you have to do is do a search for free human design chart. And you need to put in your birth date, your birth time, and where you were born, because that affects your birth time. And so I would suggest doing that. If you have any problems, just speak with me and I can help you with it. So in terms of what the topic is, what is creating time? Now, what I actually really see creating time is something we're actually not talking about because it's not human design. I see creating time more as like stretching time or creating new minutes from time. That is more of like a healing technique or energy. So maybe another talk another time. But today what we're talking about is things associated with human design, which include increasing your effectiveness, because that helps you get more done in less time. Understanding your strengths and what you're less strong at, because that helps you be more effective. Delegating time, because then time is being used by somebody else and not you. A big thing I focus on in human design in general is making the best decisions that are most aligned with you, because everything in life we do is a decision. We decide to do something or not to do something. If we're procrastinating, we're deciding not to decide. And so that's a big thing, because the better our decision making, the more aligned our decisions, and the more on track we are with our time and our life. And then also better communication. And a big thing also is not being so influenced by other people, because then you're doing things that are good for you and not just other people's agendas, and you're making better use of time. So today we're going to talk about some of them, not all, because of the time, but I'm happy also to do another talk on this subject. If it interests you, just let me know, and I'll do whatever you want. So let's get started. We're going to start with 2 people that I know for the sake of today, and calling them Eve and Carol. And these, when I decided to do a talk on using human design to create more time, these are the 2 people that jumped to my head first of all, because Eve and Carol are the 2 people I know that they talk a lot about time, either like not having enough time or making best use of time or how to create more time. Like or everything takes time. Like they have time on their minds a lot. And so I thought it was really interesting, because when I looked at their 2 charts, I saw some common themes. And the more I thought about these themes, the more I thought, well, these really have a lot to do with time. So I'm going to talk about two of them. So first of all, and just in terms of like human design terminology, Carol is what is called a manifesting generator, and Eve is what is called a projector. Now, don't worry about it. What these things are basically is just that they're energy type in human design. There's different energy types. And so that's them. That's not something they have in common, but they have other things in common. One thing they have in common is the same profile. Now, in human design, what is called your profile is basically how you interact with the world. I'll leave it at that for now. There are 12 different profiles. Even Carol have something that is called a 5-1 profile. And how your profile is built in human design, everybody has two numbers. They see with even Carol, it's a 5 and it's a 1. And each of the two numbers is a number between 1 and 6. And you never have the same number. And each number, excuse me, each number represents a different way of interacting with the world. There are 12 different possible profile numbers in human design. And again, both Eve and Carol have 5-1 profiles. And when I looked at the 5-1 profile, I thought about it in connection with time. It actually makes a lot of sense. It's very, very interesting because a person with a 5-1 profile, and oh, by the way, if you just have your human design chart, you can see a place where it says profile. It's usually it's one of the more basic parts of your chart, basic in terms of the first things you look at. And so someone with a 5-1 profile is usually a good problem solver, and they usually deliver pretty practical solutions. And the result of this is that a lot of people seek them out. And the problem solving part and people seeking them out has a lot to do with the 5. They are frequently in leadership positions, often seen as a fixer, and they usually have a lot of people asking a lot of things about them. Now, in contrast, someone who has a 1 in their profile is generally someone who has a need to look into things deeply, like look for a lot of data, a lot of facts, analyze things, and understand them deeply before they give it as a solution. And looking at things deeply helps them feel more secure and more confident. It's just who they are. And so in many ways, when you're looking at it in relation to time, there's a tension between these two things. On the one hand, you're being sought after a lot to help people out and to resolve issues. And on the other hand, this takes time because your natural inclination, the way that you work best with yourself is to look at things deeply. And so it's quite easy to understand why in that case you might feel like you're overwhelmed or very rushed or you have too much going on or not enough time to do things. And so for someone with a 5-1 profile, there are a few solutions to this and how to help create more time for you. I've mentioned 4, there's more than this, but let's look at these 4. The first is boundaries. And also these are things that will help most people, but they're especially directed towards someone with a 5-1 profile. So you need boundaries around yourself to make sure you're taking care of yourself and not just everyone else's demands. Many of you know that I also work with Bach flowers. And a Bach flower that is very good for this is Century. It's helped me a huge amount with my boundaries, and it's helped a lot of people that I know. So that's one thing that I would suggest. The second thing is related to boundaries. It has to do with delegation. To realize that other people can also take care of a lot of these demands people are asking. Now, sometimes it takes putting your ego a little to the side to realize that you're not the only one, but it will really help you out a lot. Something specifically related to a 5-1 profile is to respect the 1 in you, to respect that you really do need time to feel good about the help that you're giving. That if you do things that are many things that are a lot of looking deeply into it, you just won't feel so good or so confident or so secure. And so give yourself enough time. And this will help also create boundaries around yourself, because once you book enough time to take care of the 1 part of your profile, the 5 automatically won't have as much time to be a fixer. And the last thing is self-care is a reminder to us all, regardless of what our profile numbers are, we need to take care of ourselves. because the more we take care of ourselves, the less we're subjected to burnout, and we can make better use of our time. So that's the first thing that I found very interesting about Carol and Eve's profiles. That's similar is their or their charts in human design. It's their 5-1 profile. And something I realized I didn't mention to you is these pictures is what a human design chart looks like for people who are new to human design. It's quite odd, but with time, everything in it makes a lot of sense. So I want to describe one thing which you see in the chart, which are all those shapes. In human design, those shapes are called centers, and they roughly correlate to the chakras. They're a bit different, but they roughly correlate to the chakras. Sometimes to the energy in that chakra, not always. And there are two general modes to centers. Either they're colored in. The color doesn't make a difference. It's more of a convention, the particular color that's used and the shape of the center that's used is more of a convention. So either it's colored in, which means that it's defined, or it's not colored in and it shows up as white or gray. And that means it's undefined or open. The undefined and open are slightly different, but on off, it's enough for our purposes for today. So when a center or one of the shapes is colored in and defined, it means that you have consistent access to the energy that's associated with that center. It comes from within yourself. And when it's undefined or not colored in, you still have access to that energy, but on a more inconsistent basis because it comes generally from things outside of yourself. And so while you have access to it, you can't depend on it all the time, and it shows up slightly different for you. So Eve and Carol have one of their centers. It's the root center. It's that square on the bottom of their chart that you see is not colored in. It's undefined. It's gray. And because it's undefined, it means that they don't have consistent access to the energy associated with their root center. And the root center has a lot to do with time and creating time and having time, because your root center represents some of the energy associated with it is the energy of getting things done, including under pressure. And that means that if your root center is defined, it's colored in, unlike Eve and Carol, and about 60% of the population have a defined root center, it means that you generally work well under pressure and you generally have an easy time getting things done, or easier. Of course, everything changes according to your life situation and your other centers, but that's what the root center helps you with. Getting things done under pressure and not feeling particularly stressed by it, being able to handle it, and just being busy and getting things done. And so if your root center is undefined, that's about 40% of the population, including myself, it means that there's less of a pressure to get things done. So there might be more of a tendency to procrastinate. And when someone with an undefined center is actually really busy, has pressure of time, there's more of a tendency to feel overwhelmed or stressed or just worried about the time. And so that's why frequently someone with an undefined root center might have more of a inclination to procrastinate or to feel rushed or overwhelmed once they are actually getting down to things. And as a general statement as well, if you have an undefined center, whether it's your root center or any of the other centers in your chart, when you're around someone with that exact same center that's defined, you are affected by their energy, and frequently it can also be amplified. So if someone has an undefined root center and they're near someone who has a defined one, and 60% of the population has a defined center, so most people are going to be around has one, you often feel stressed and pressured as well with time because you amplify that energy of the root center. So the question is, what can you do? If your root center is undefined, what can you do to create more time and not procrastinate so much, not to feel so rushed and overwhelmed when you're actually getting things done and you have pressures of time or volume of your work? One of the best things you can do is have awareness, because Once we're aware this is how we're designed, it becomes easier to accept it and easier to change things. So if you have an undefined center and you have like a pressure of, you have to get a bunch of things done, whether it's, next hour, the next day, whenever it happens to be, and you're feeling stressed, sometimes a reality check is useful. You can say, well, you know what? There's a good chance I'm feeling this way because my root center is defined, and perhaps it's not a complete reflection of the situation. Maybe the situation is not so stressful. This is something that I myself do because I do feel this a lot. I was a lawyer for many, many years, and at one point I was doing outsourcing, and I used to work with someone. He was like the nicest guy in the world. Like nice. I would do, just no pressure, no nothing. He was just like so good humored. But whenever I was around him and got work from him, I would feel so stressed to get it done. And at one point I thought, I bet you his root center is defined and that's just very active, and I'm amplifying it and feeling stressed. And so what I would do, this is what I recommend you think about doing, is I would just, again, using energy techniques, just to clear out the energy. Just focus on the energy that wasn't mine, the stress energy leaving. And it really, really helps. Sometimes it takes a little while to get used to doing that, but it really, really helps. So that's what I suggest if you have an undefined root center and you're feeling really, really rushed and you're thinking that perhaps the amount of work you have is not in proportion to feeling that way. So with that, we're finishing with Eve and Carol for today. The two things that they have in common, which helps them, which probably contributes to them feeling rushed, and some solutions to that. And now we're going on to the third person, who we're calling for our purposes Isaac. Now, Isaac has a very, very different chart from Eve and Carol. We were saying how Carol is a manifesting generator and Eve is projector. Well, Isaac's energy type is called a generator. And when I spoke with Isaac before using his chart, he was telling me how he feels frequently unfocused and disorganized with the time, and he doesn't really get to all the things he wants to get to. So I asked if I could use his chart because that seemed really perfect for today's topic. And so this is Isaac, and let's just move on to him. So we're going back a bit to talk about centers. If you recall, we were saying that centers are those shapes that you see in your chart, and each of them is represented by a different type of energy. And a bit of a deeper nuance in centers are those numbers that you also see. The numbers represent something that is called a gate in human design. And your gate is a nuance of the type of energy of the center it sits in. So a bit of a mouthful, but basically your center is the general energy and the gates are the nuances. And we talk about centers being undefined or defined. And when they're defined, you have more consistent access to the energy of that center. You could say a parallel to a defined center is what is called an active gate. So when a gate, you see the numbers in the chart, some are sort of pale and some are more bold-faced or emphasized. When the gate number is emphasized, that means, and it's active. More precisely, when it's emphasized in a defined center, it's active. So what it means, if you have a defined center, let's look, for instance, at that red square in Isaac's chart, in the bottom middle of his chart. It's red, which means that it is defined. So he has consistent access to that center. That's a sacral center in human design, and it contains a lot of things. Among other things, is life force energy, the energy to do things. And in it, there are a lot of emphasized gates. There's 5 of them. They're active. And so it means that Isaac has very strong sacral energy, and it's expressed in many ways in his life. And that's a really important point because his sacral energy has a lot to do with just being able to do a lot of things. So when I see that, and when I hear Isaac say that he doesn't get around to doing all the things that he wants to, it leads me to think that perhaps his decision making could be improved a little bit. Because theoretically, with his chart, we're also going to talk about his root center afterwards, he should have enough energy, if it's directed in the correct way, to do a lot of what he wants to do. And so for me, I mentioned this a bit earlier, like for me, decision making is one of the core bits of human design, because once we make better decisions that align with us, not with how we're expected to decide, not how other people decide, but how we decide, then our life improves. And in human design, there's a lot of different ways of deciding depending on your type. We mentioned types include the manifesting generator like Carol, projector like Eve, and generator like Isaac, and also some other factors as well. So this is a big thing that I really, really focus a lot is, first of all, make decisions well, because everything flows after that. And previous episode that we were on for human design, which is in June, talked a lot about decision making for projectors and also for generators. So I'm not going to repeat it right now because it takes more than 30 seconds to talk about proper decision making. But I would suggest that Isaac, and I'll talk to Isaac after, look at that episode. And anyone who's a generator or a projector could be useful, because it talks a lot about how to make better decisions. And that helps you focus on the most important things in your life. So this presentation, I did put one slide on about decision making. You'll be able to download this presentation if you want, but episode 1 is a little better to look at because it's more detailed. And back to Isaac. Decision making is important to everybody, but it's even more so, more than anyone, to generators like he is, because a lot of generators have a difficult time stopping something in midstream. And so that means that if Isaac commits to something, whether it's long term in the future or takes a lot of his time now, and it's not really in great alignment with him, he's going to be wasting a lot of time working on it, because it will be harder for him to stop in the middle. So that's the first thing I'll suggest to Isaac. And this is actually for Isaac a recurring theme. It's just to be a lot better with his decision making. Now, the second thing I want to also talk about Isaac's root center. His root center is defined, and I just want to remind you what it looks like. Let's first of all go back to Eve and Carol. So I'm going to their slide. It's that square on the bottom of their chart. So theirs is white or gray, which means undefined. So it means they have inconsistent access to it. And that can result in procrastinating and feeling stressed under pressure. And if you look at Isaac, you can see his is colored in. It's brown, which means that his is defined, which means he probably has less of an issue with procrastinating or feeling stressed under pressure. But what it does mean is that because your root center is puts a pressure of getting things done and being busy in your life, he might have a tendency just be doing a lot of things. And this is also complemented by his defined sacral with all the gates. So not only does he have a tendency to be busy, but he has enough energy to do that. And I just want to say that this is an amazing combination, because it means that Isaac has the potential to do so much more than a lot of people. But it also means he needs to be very, very clear about making the right decisions, about doing the right things. And I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record here, but when I look at Isaac's chart and I hear what he's saying, it's just something that I think is just really, really important. It's important for us all. We can all improve our decision making, all of us. So I just want to say also, this is another thing that I really like about human design, talking about even Carol's root center being undefined and then Isaac's being defined. This is something that I believe really, really deeply, is that there's no good and no bad chart in human design. Rather, it just describes who you are. And the more that we understand ourselves, and the more that we accept ourselves the way we are, and don't try to change who we are, but just lean into whom we are, the better our lives are. It's just a matter of understanding and then figuring out what works best for us, who we are. It's not how somebody else works, it's how we work. And so things that you can help do to create more time when you have a defined root center is awareness and proper decision making. Does this sound familiar? And so we've already talked about this. It's like realizing he has a hard time stopping midstream, taking a pause before committing or not committing to someone, and just checking in with himself if this is the right decision for himself. And this is another thing that actually, with Isaac in general, that I think is really important about human design is that although it's complex, if you just get one or two simple, important tips from it, even just one, even decision making and nothing else, your life is going to be transformed. And I really like that about human design because it means that you don't have to go and study, sit in a cave and study it for like a million years. You can study for a shorter time and just practice and practice and practice, and your life is going to be so much better. And I just want to mention one more thing about Isaac, which is interesting, which is according to his chart, his life path is not always obvious to him. This means that it might not be obvious to him what his long-term goals are in the way that's easier for someone else with a different chart to come up with them. And back to what we were saying about with human design, how I look at it is just accepting who we are. I would say that's fine. We don't have, if that's not how we're designed to have a clear idea of what our path is, that's just who we are. That's fine. That's just who we are. And to the extent that he remains in the moment and makes proper decisions moment by moment, he's going to get to the right place. And so that's another thing that's just important for Isaac, just to remember that he doesn't have to be one of these people that has, 5-year, 10-year plans, even 1-year plan, if it doesn't work for him, because it's not as easy for him according to his chart. But just keep making the right decisions. It's like that saying, I forget exactly how it is, but you don't have to see your whole path. It's just what your next step is. That's what it is for Isaac. So this is the quick and speedy how to make more time with human design. I'm going to get back to questions and see if there's any questions afterwards. But first of all, I just want to say that I'm planning on having these talks maybe once every month or two, mainly on human design and Bach flowers, but also things like inspiration and personal professional development. And basically it's for you. So you tell me what it is that you want to hear, and I would love to do it. Also, if you want me to look at your chart, like I did at Carol, Eves, or Isaac's, let me know. I'll change your name and details about you so nobody will figure out who you are. And if you have a question also associated with it, just let me know. Because like basically my purpose is to have it good for you and interesting for you. And how to reach me, WhatsApp is good, email, my website, whatever. And before I get a question, just like a word about me. So this is basically what I do is I help people like connect with themselves, whether through decision making, anything else. So basically you can get to your goals easier, figure out what your goals are easier. I work a lot with Bach flowers, with human design, with other things as well. And talk to me if you have any questions. I'm here. So let me just see if we have any questions. Just one sec here. Okay, there's a question about how human design charts differ from astrological or numerological charts. Well, a human design chart, let's just go back to the human design chart here for a sec. Human design, it's based on different things, including astrology. And so how the astrology comes into it is it helps define what your gates are, what your centers are, what your profile. So that's how it is. You don't see it specifically in this specific chart. There's different ways of looking at human design charts, which are a bit more complex, and they show a bit more. Human design doesn't contain a lot of numerology in it. It's more the I Ching, which you can say is between 1 and 64. There is numbers in it. So it differs in that human design combines different modalities together. And so the chart reflects that. But there is a lot of astrology influence in it. That's why to create your chart, you need to have your birth date and birth time. It's very precise in that way. And for some people, the birth time, what there's not a lot of change in their chart over a 24-hour period. Other people, it can be a dramatic change. So that's the quick answer, and I can talk to you more about that after if you want as well. And I think that is it for questions. So, but if anything else comes up afterwards, just do talk to me. And thank you so much for being here. And just have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.